Story 1. This is my freelance revenge story that happened about 8 years ago, and it was one of the first times I was ghosted without being paid. I created a landing page for her elven symbol jewelry store, a bunch of esoteric nonsense. But I was young and trying to break into copywriting, so I took any opportunity I could. We agreed on a pure performance deal, so I received nothing up front. However, we settled on a 5% performance fee. Her WordPress store was really small, and I was aiming to get somewhere between $300 to $800 out of it. Honestly, at some level, I would have been happy to just do it for practice and to build my portfolio. Long story short, I wrote the landing page and built it directly inside her WordPress site. She started running some Facebook advertisements to it, and I was shocked to see that it was actually converting. $120 on day 1, $200 on day 2, $150 on day 3, $360 on day 4, and so on. By the end of the month, that landing page brought in $6,000 in revenue. I honestly thought I had struck gold. $300 in royalties in the first month. I was going to earn a solid payout from just 2 days of work. Well, predictably, she disappeared the moment I mentioned first invoice. 3 months went by. Nothing. No replies to emails. Calls went unanswered. She was still running ads. I could see all the sales coming in because I still had access to her website. Then, out of nowhere, I received a panicked message. "My site is down. Are you doing this? Please stop." Now, I had absolutely nothing to do with her store going down. It was probably just her inexpensive hosting service. But after being ghosted for months, while she made thousands of dollars off my work, I realized this could be my one and only shot at getting paid. So I decided to play along. But I had to be careful. I couldn't just admit in writing that I was the one who caused the site to crash or threaten her to pay up. What if she went to the police and showed them the messages? No, I knew I had to make her think I was behind it, but not actually admit to anything at the same time. So I replied, "Sorry, but I'm not going to talk to you until you pay me what you owe me." This turned out to be the perfect level of vague. I never said I hacked her site. I never threatened to keep it down. I just looked suspicious enough to make her wonder. She immediately called me and asked what I wanted. I told her I still had access to her website and Google Analytics. I could see exactly what she had made from the landing page, and I just wanted what we had agreed on, 5% of sales from that page. It ended up being just shy of wanting $500. She said she would take care of it. We got off the call, I sent her the final invoice, and she wired the money immediately. She then messaged me with a payment confirmation from her bank and asked me to enable her website. It worked. I was shaking when I typed back this reply. "I had nothing to do with your website crashing. You should talk to your hosting provider." I never heard from her again. Story 2. Someone else's airplane story in this group reminded me of an experience that I had while boarding a JetBlue flight. JetBlue boards passengers using group letters. I have a JetBlue credit card and often pay for a priority seat, so I usually get a pretty decent boarding group letter like a B or C. On this particular day, I did not pay for a seat, but I used my JetBlue points to purchase my flight, so I was automatically assigned to Group D. When it was time to board, the flight attendant finally called Group D, and I was standing in a very long line. That's when this woman decided she was going to hop in front of me, saying, "We're all getting on the same plane, right?" I could clearly see on her ticket that she was in Group F, 2 groups behind mine. While in theory she was right, I was too tired to argue, and I was honestly hoping she would embarrass herself. Pro tip: I'm a frequent flyer. The best way to board early if you are not a person with disabilities, elderly, a veteran, or traveling with a baby or baby carriage, is to travel with friends or a partner. Again, because I often receive early boarding groups on both JetBlue and Delta Airlines, if I'm traveling with a friend and we will be seated next to each other, I'll have them wait in line with me and pretend to be my partner. It works every time. We finally reached the front of the line. The woman scanned her phone, and her ticket was denied. The flight attendant said, "Ma'am, this is Group D, not Group F." She responded, "We're all getting on the same plane." The flight attendant repeated, "This is Group D." The woman replied, "But I'm already here at the desk, why can't you make an exception?" The flight attendant answered, "I repeated Group D several times. You are not in Group D." The woman argued, "Well, this gentleman let me go ahead of him." The flight attendant turned to me and asked, "Sir, do you know this woman?" I replied, "Nope." The flight attendant then took my ticket and scanned it. I always print paper tickets as soon as I enter the airport. She said, "I hope you have a safe flight, sir." Then she turned back to the woman. "Ma'am, you need to wait until your group is called. If you do not move, we will have to call the authorities." I quietly chuckled as I walked past her. Story 3. I am perhaps fortunate that in my line of work, I rarely encounter entitled parents, but reading these stories has reminded me of an incident that took place many years ago. I was working for a small dance and theater production company in the 70s. One day, the boss decided we needed to clean our dance floor, essentially half a dozen rolls of very heavy-duty black lino. We did a lot of work with ballet companies, and consequently the flooring got covered in dancers' rosin, a rather sticky powder-like substance that ballet dancers use on their dance shoes for grip, which needed cleaning down periodically. The quickest way we found to do this was to haul the whole shebang down to the local foreshore along the Thames, roll it out into the water, and then give it a good going over with a stiff bristled broom. Worked a treat and would only take 20 minutes. On this day, it was extremely cold, so I elected to get into my wetsuit as I'd have to walk one end of the roll out into the river, and I didn't fancy freezing my butt off standing around in Old Father Thames. As I walked out the third roll, I felt a rather odd sensation in my right foot. Something was clearly off, so I walked back up onto the foreshore. It felt like the ball of my foot was flapping about as if it had somehow been disconnected from the rest of my foot. Stepping out of the water, I saw that my foot was bleeding like a stuck pig. I had apparently trodden on a large piece of broken glass that had sliced right through my plimsolls and straight into my foot. Aghast, my boss rapidly wrangled the floor section we'd been cleaning into the van, and we hurried off post-haste for the nearest A&E, accident and emergency. 10 minutes later, I'm sitting on a chair in the very busy waiting room, still in my wetsuit, with a sweatshirt tightly wrapped around my foot, while the boss checks me in. I'm still losing blood like it's going out of fashion. Obviously, I've sliced into some major blood vessels, and there's a pool of blood accumulating on the floor despite the temporary bandage. As you might imagine, I'm also starting to feel rather faint and very out of sorts. It was at this juncture that the Karen manifested in all her glory. Sat almost opposite was, as I have subsequently discovered, a stereotypical Karen sporting a coiffure of indeterminate provenance and an expression like she'd consumed enough lemons to populate the glasses of every single gin and tonic drinker in the country. Sat with her was a glum-looking 9-year-old. "Excuse me, would you mind not bleeding all over the floor in front of my son? It's making him feel sick." Seriously? Despite my weakened state, I felt affronted. What would you like me to do? Go and find a needle and thread and sew it up myself? Remarkably, the lemon-sucking expression intensified. Why don't you sit somewhere else? It was at this point that decorum departed for sunnier climes. I gave her both barrels at close range and at high volume. Why don't you duck off and sit somewhere else if it bothers you so much? You can clearly see that walking around with a severely gashed foot is going to be something of a problem for me. You, on the other hand, seem to be perfectly capable of getting up with minimal effort. If you're that bothered, duck off somewhere else. If looks could kill, I would have died on the spot, but I continued to stare her down. At this point, my boss comes back from checking me in. He parks his 6'2" frame in front of her and in a low but menacing voice starts to curse her out in Russian. Karen goes white and grabs her son's hand, scurries off to the other side of the waiting room. Shortly thereafter, I get called into a consulting room, and 13 stitches and a pint of O+ later, I'm sent home to recuperate. Boss took me home, and on the way back, I asked him what he'd said to the Karen. My mother's recipe for borscht. Addendum: Karen's son was in for the removal of a tiny wood splinter in his pinky. Story 4. I'm 17 and have been looking after my little brother since he was born. He's 10 now and has Down syndrome, which means he learns and grows at his own pace. He's also got alopecia, so he doesn't have any hair. Because of the Down syndrome, he's still in 2nd grade and sometimes has trouble putting sentences together. He looks younger than he actually is, which doesn't help when people stare or make comments. Our parents work a lot, so I've been the one watching out for him. Kids at school can be cruel, and I've had to step in more times than I can count when someone tries to pick on him or call him names. The word that starts with R makes my blood boil every single time I hear it. My brother is the sweetest kid you'll ever meet, and he doesn't deserve that kind of treatment from anyone. This whole thing happened right when everyone was starting to worry about getting sick and having to stay home for weeks. My mom decided we should hit up the local library to grab a bunch of books, just in case we got stuck inside. Smart thinking, really, because we ended up being quarantined for 2 weeks, not long after this. I grabbed my books first, mostly some sci-fi novels and a programming guide I'd been wanting to check out. Then I headed over to the children's section where my brother was playing. They had this cool little train table set up and some other quiet toys that were perfect for him. He was running this wooden train around the tracks and making soft choo-choo noises under his breath. My mom walked over and told me she and my sister were going to the coffee shop down the street to get some work done on their laptops. She asked if I could keep an eye on my brother, which was totally normal for us. I said sure, no problem. She kissed my brother on the head and left. We went back to playing with trains, and he was having a great time. That's when this kid, maybe 8 or 9 years old, came over. He wasn't being quiet like you're supposed to in a library. The kid asked loudly what was wrong with my brother. People ask this question a lot, usually because of his bald head. Most people think he has cancer or something. I explained quietly that my brother has Down syndrome and alopecia. The kid wanted to know what that meant, so I told him that Down syndrome means he grows and learns slower than other kids, and alopecia is why he doesn't have hair. Then the kid said something that made my heart start pounding. He called my brother the R word. I tried to stay calm because getting angry wouldn't help anyone. I told the kid it wasn't polite to call people that word. He just said okay in this tone like he couldn't care less, then ran off. I went back to playing trains with my brother. He was lining up all the cars by color, which he loves to do. But then the kid came back and he brought his mom with him. She looked furious, like someone had just insulted her entire family. The woman demanded to know what I had said to her son. I explained that I had told him not to call my brother the R word. She asked if my brother was one, and when I didn't understand what she meant, she repeated the slur. I told her that yes, he has a disability, but he's still a human being. Then she said something that made me so angry I could barely think straight. She claimed that people with disabilities have no reason to be in a library because they can't read. This was completely wrong. My brother can read simple books, and he's getting better every day. Plus, he was starting to back away from this woman because she was yelling and it was scaring him. I asked her to please quiet down since we were in a library. She screamed that I couldn't tell her what to do. I tried to explain that my brother could read and that just because someone is different doesn't mean they shouldn't be treated with respect, but she cut me off. What she said next made me feel like someone had punched me in the stomach. She told me that in Iceland, they kill all the babies with Down syndrome because they know they're worthless. I'd heard about this before, and it always made me sick to think about. How could anyone say something so horrible about innocent kids? By now, she'd gotten so loud that one of the library staff members came over. He was this older guy with glasses who looked really concerned. He politely asked the woman to quiet down or he would have to ask her to leave. The woman refused and demanded that he kick my brother and me out instead. She kept using that awful word and said that people like my brother shouldn't be allowed in public places. You could tell he was done with her attitude. He told her that she needed to leave. She screamed that he couldn't make her leave, but he said that yes, he could, and she needed to go now. She absolutely lost it. She started grabbing her kid's arm really hard. She yelled about discrimination and threatened to call the police, saying we'd all be sorry. But she was already walking toward the exit, dragging her poor kid behind her. When they left, I saw her make that loser sign with her hand and hold it up to her forehead. The staff member turned to me and looked really apologetic. He said he was sorry that my brother and I had to deal with that and asked if we were both okay. I thanked him for stepping in and told him we were fine. He said that kind of behavior was never acceptable there and that my brother was welcome anytime. My brother had been hiding behind me during most of the confrontation, but now he tugged on my shirt and said quietly that the woman was mean. I agreed with him, but told him she was gone now. About 10 minutes later, my mom and sister came back from the coffee shop. They could tell something had happened just by looking at my face. My mom asked what was wrong because I looked upset. I told her the whole story while we were checking out our books. Her face got angrier and angrier as I explained what the woman had said. My mom said she couldn't believe someone would say those things and that she was proud of me for handling it the right way. My sister called the woman a psycho and said she was glad the staff had kicked her out. When we were walking to the car, I saw the woman and her kids sitting in their vehicle in the parking lot. She was on her phone, probably still complaining to someone about what had happened. When she saw us, she rolled down her window and yelled that this wasn't over and she was reporting all of us. My mom told her to go ahead and report us for existing. The woman's mouth dropped open like she couldn't believe my mom had talked back to her. She rolled up her window and drove away, tires squealing. On the drive home, my brother was looking through one of his new picture books in the back seat. He said he liked the library, and I told him I did too, and that we'd go back soon. That night, my mom called the library to make sure everything was okay and to thank the staff member who had helped us. Turns out, the woman had actually called the library after we left, demanding that they ban us from coming back. The manager told my mom that they'd already decided to ban the woman instead if she ever tried to come back. The whole experience really stuck with me. It reminded me why I need to be ready to stand up for my brother. There are cruel people out there who will try to make him feel bad about who he is. But there are also good people like that staff member who will do the right thing. A few weeks later, we went back to the library. The same staff member was there, and he gave my brother a high five and asked him about his new books. My brother lit up and started telling him all about the story he'd been reading. That woman never showed up again, but if she had, I would have been ready for her. Story 5. I worked in bars and restaurants for years. During that time, I developed too many pet peeves to count and left the industry with a huge chip on my shoulder and enough trauma that I still have server nightmares years later. I miss liking humans. This is the story of how I served a table very, very badly because they were stupid and had a crappy attitude, and because I didn't work there. Despite no longer working as a server, I guess I still look like one. I went through a phase where I only owned one pair of black Converse, 2 pairs of black jeans, and 7 black t-shirts. I called it my Batman wardrobe. It made getting dressed in the morning very easy, but it made walking through a restaurant very difficult. With this outfit in mind, I will absolutely concede that in some restaurant settings, I might have been bringing this on myself. But as common as this outfit is among service staff, it certainly isn't what most servers in most restaurants wear. It's also a very normal outfit to see on the street. Most of the time, if I'm just trying to walk to the bathroom and someone at a table tries to order from me, I'll just quickly let them know I don't work there. But one time, I'm tempted to try and justify this by outlining for you the laundry list of annoying behaviors I had already witnessed from this table. In the interest of saving time, I'll just assure you that this table of 6 absolutely knew who their server was and had absolutely been treating her poorly. They were one of those groups where the first guy orders his beer, and by the time the other 5 finally tell the server their orders, the first guy is already complaining that his beer is taking too long, when the server hasn't even left the table side. Yeah, this actually happens. A lot. While returning to my table from the bathroom, one of these winners stops me with a, "Hey, get me a bad beer because I'm an amateur with bad taste." I give him a cheerful, "Sure," and proceed toward my table. Quickly, his repulsive girlfriend pipes up with a whiny, "And I want another of one of this," gesturing toward some pink sludge in a cup because of course that's her taste in beverages. I decide to stick around and let the whole table place orders with me before returning to my table and wait for them to notice me sitting there with my friends. I really didn't think this would go on long. I'm seated in plain sight about 2 tables away. They don't notice. Their server is tableside again within moments, and their round is promptly ordered again since they're definitely the type to double order items from different staff. So my prank goes unnoticed. Later, I go to visit the bartender, have a brief chat and grab a couple drinks. I'm walking back to my table with 2 beers in hand. "Is that mine?" a voice asks as a hand reaches out to snatch it. "Nope," I reply and carry on. My actions had the potential to make life harder for the staff, and I'd feel bad about it if I wasn't friends with all of them, and if they hadn't been in on it. This table is so badly behaved and has been determined to have a bad time since before they arrived. They're really a lost cause. Any attempt to clear things up for them wouldn't be worth missing out on the entertainment of messing with them. So I start looking for excuses to innocently walk past their table. I take a few more bathroom visits than I really need and go visit my friend at the bar a couple more times. I never initiate contact with these clowns, but if they take the bait, I'll take the order. They are becoming increasingly agitated and abusive with each encounter. They tell me how bad I am at my job, and I just cheerfully correct them. No, I'm actually really good at my job. They are more infuriated at how unfazed I am at the abuse than at the several drink orders I've failed to bring them. Remember, my friends and I have been seated in plain sight, a few feet away drinking and laughing it up all night. Anyhow, they drink 3 rounds despite having ordered about 9 and decide to leave. Naturally, when their bill arrives, they try to contest it, arguing that we didn't actually get most of the drinks we ordered, so they shouldn't be on the bill. The manager informs them that the bill represents only the drinks they did receive. They try to argue the point, and I just can't stand to watch my prank escalate too far, so I pipe up. "Your bill represents the drinks you ordered from your server." I don't even have to say it that loudly since I am seated so close to them. They all turn to look at me, and I want to say they realize what's going on, but that's giving them too much credit since one of them immediately lays in with the threats to call my boss. I offer them my boss' phone number and dare him to try and get a jeweler to fire their assistant for being bad at table service. He then tries to accuse me of putting items on his bill that shouldn't be there. With the access card I use to log into the POS at the restaurant where I am a customer. He still hasn't figured it out. Story 6. I, a woman in my 20s, have an older brother, Henry, who is around 40 years old and has a 9-year-old son named Otto. Henry constantly allows Otto to disrespect people. Sorry for the length of this story, but there's a lot to unpack. Background. When I was a teenager, I used to babysit Otto and loved him as if he were my own child. For nearly the first 4 years of his life, I was basically an additional parent to Otto. I taught him basic manners and had to undo some of the troubling behaviors he picked up at home from Henry and my sister-in-law, such as hitting and kicking animals. Henry always expected me to look after Otto whenever he visited our mother's house. I was always the one who had to stop Otto from hitting animals, opening doors to run down the stairs, or doing anything that could potentially hurt him. Henry never once tried to redirect Otto's behavior himself. He and my sister-in-law would just sit on the couch and lazily say Otto's name in an attempt to get him to stop. Once I graduated and married my husband, I moved in with him and stopped babysitting Otto as often. That's when things began to go downhill. Otto was a fairly decent toddler with the usual tantrums expected from any toddler dealing with big emotions and frustration, but once he entered elementary school, he began acting very disrespectfully. Present day. While I was pregnant with my first child, my mom was hospitalized after surgery. We were all visiting her in her hospital room. Henry and Otto arrived last, and everyone was chatting when I started talking to Otto. Out of nowhere, Otto called me a little brat. Henry didn't say a word. I firmly told Otto that he does not get to speak to me that way, and that we don't say things like that to people. Otto had just turned 7, and clearly, that kind of language is a learned behavior from his environment. Kids don't typically use such words unless they've heard them from someone else or picked them up from media. Otto then asked me why my belly was so big. I wasn't offended. This was a curious question and didn't seem intended to be mean, so I explained that I had a baby living in my tummy. This will be important later. At that time, Otto had just been suspended from school for saying racial slurs. Henry and my sister-in-law insisted they had never used those words at home and claimed Otto picked it up from another kid. Apparently, Otto and another classmate had been using the slurs together, and Henry responded with the classic line, "My kid would never." Nearly 2 years after that incident, we were all gathered at my mother's house for an event. Otto was trying to figure out which of his cousins was who, and he said, "So cousin 1 is the fat one." The cousin he referred to is not fat at all, nor overweight. Her sister, cousin 2, is a bit taller and skinnier, so they have different body types. Henry heard Otto say this, but once again didn't correct him. I understand that children are curious and can be blunt, but this comment was completely uncalled for. Deliberately labeling one sister as fat when she clearly is not just felt mean-spirited. Once again, I had to step in and explain to Otto that he shouldn't use weight as a descriptor, and that there are other ways to identify people. He said okay, but continued calling his cousin fat. I'm now pregnant with my second child, and we were celebrating at the baby shower. Henry, my sister-in-law, and their kids didn't attend any of the events for my first child, not the baby shower, not the first birthday party, so I didn't formally invite them this time. Instead, I let my mom mention it in passing. To my surprise, Henry and Otto showed up. As usual, Henry let Otto run around unsupervised. My husband and I had our own toddler to care for, and I was heavily pregnant, so I wasn't about to watch Otto. But then I noticed him drawing on a whiteboard with permanent markers. The drawing in question, a cartoon character that Otto dislikes, drawn as if the character were no longer living. Otto had been drawing this same character for over 2 months and would talk frequently about how he wanted to hurt the character because he didn't like it. I scolded Otto because he clearly knew better than to use permanent markers. These were not the typical dry erase kind, and it was obvious. I also spoke to him about the drawing and explained why it was inappropriate and concerning. Later in the party, Otto was speaking with my other brother. When Otto got upset, he said, "Why are you so fat?" and walked away. Yes, my brother is a bit husky, but Otto knows better. Then, Otto lost a game at the baby shower and, out of frustration, took his anger out on me. Despite having seen both me and his mother pregnant, Otto got angry and asked me why I was so fat like Daddy Pig from the children's show Peppa Pig. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, thinking it might just be childish curiosity, so I reminded him that I had a baby in my belly. He responded, "No," and kept saying I was just fat. Henry heard all of this and did nothing to correct Otto. At this point, I lost my composure a little and, in a joking manner, told Otto, "Hey, at least I have an excuse for why my belly is big. Why do you keep yapping like Peppa Pig?" Otto, of course, continued to call me fat over and over again. He kept trying to open gifts that were clearly not his, gifts that were meant for my growing family. I had been kind enough to let him help during the unwrapping process by handing me extra tissue paper, thinking that small inclusion would make him feel involved without causing any disruption. But once he started pushing limits again, being loud, interrupting conversations, and generally disregarding everyone else's presence, I had to put my foot down. I sternly told him to go sit with his dad, and he did, but only for a short while. He kept wandering back, interrupting the process repeatedly, completely unchecked by Henry. Then came the cake. Otto kept pestering me, asking over and over again when he could have cake. It wasn't just excitement, it was non-stop whining. I tried to calmly tell him that we were waiting until after the gifts, but he wasn't satisfied with any explanation. Shortly after, he lost another party game, and this time, he didn't take it well at all. Even though he had been cheating during the game, when he didn't win, he started sulking dramatically and loudly said, "I'm avoiding this silly party, it's not fair." He continued pouting, complaining, and trying to leave for the rest of the celebration. It was exhausting. My husband and I were juggling our own toddler, I was heavily pregnant, and I was trying to host and enjoy a celebration for our second child. Otto's behavior was not only disruptive, it was hurtful and emotionally draining. I couldn't understand why Henry seemed so checked out from everything. He didn't once correct Otto. He didn't say, "Hey, stop doing that," or offer any sort of guidance. He just sat back, expecting everyone else to manage the chaos. Here's the thing, I practice gentle parenting, not permissive parenting. That means I meet my toddler where she's at emotionally, help her navigate those big feelings, and redirect her when she's making unsafe or unkind choices. I'm not hovering over her constantly, but I am mindful and engaged. If she's about to do something dangerous, I move her away from the situation. If she's overwhelmed, we take a moment to breathe and decompress. And yes, my toddler has tantrums, she's a child. That's normal, but we work through them together in a constructive and safe way. I did the same thing with Otto when he was younger. When I used to watch him, I parented him with care and structure. I was consistent, I taught him respect and kindness, and I was present. I put in so much time and effort into helping raise him, but now it just feels like all that work vanished the moment I stopped being the default caregiver. It's as if all of it was undone by the absence of structure and boundaries in his current environment. It hurts, honestly. Not because I think Otto is a bad kid, he's not. He's still young, and kids make mistakes. They push boundaries. But it's clear that he's not being guided anymore, and it's even more frustrating to feel like I'm the only one who ever says anything when he crosses a line, especially when it's directed at me or someone I love. Henry and his wife expect the rest of us to step in and fill in as parents whenever they're around. But I have my own children now. I have my own responsibilities, my own family to raise. It's not fair, and it's not sustainable.